see you here.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Jesse. Right on.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Great American. If this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our new videos. Today we focus on a project that touched the lives of millions who served this country with honor and sacrifice. This is Donald Trump's reform of the Veterans Affairs System, a project that aimed to deliver dignity, respect, and proper care for America's veterans. For decades, the Veterans Affairs System had been a source of frustration and disappointment. Veterans who had risked their lives for the United States often found themselves waiting months for basic medical care. Stories of mismanagement, long lines, and lack of accountability haunted the system. Families of veterans cried out for help, but their voices were often ignored. When Trump entered office, he promised that these heroes would never again be forgotten and that their service would be repaid with real action. The reform began with accountability. Trump signed legislation that made it easier to remove employees within the VA who failed to do their jobs. For years, bad practices had been protected by bureaucracy, but Trump sent a clear message: the veterans deserve better. This shift immediately improved trust, showing that incompetence would no longer be tolerated in an institution that served America's bravest. One of the most important parts of the reform was the VA Mission Act, which Trump signed into law in 2018. This law expanded veterans' access to private health care when the VA system could not provide timely services. For many veterans, this meant they no longer had to wait endlessly or travel far distances to get the care they needed. Instead, they could see a local doctor and have the government cover the cost. It was a game changer, giving freedom and dignity to those who had already sacrificed so much. Trump also expanded telehealth services, using technology to connect veterans with doctors and specialists from the comfort of their homes. For veterans in rural areas or those with limited mobility, this was not just convenience, it was life-saving. It reduced the barriers between them and the care they desperately needed. Combined with investments in modern facilities and technology, these changes brought the VA system closer to meeting the real needs of its people. The reform also strengthened programs addressing mental health, suicide prevention, and opioid addiction among veterans. Trump recognized that serving in combat left deep scars that were not always visible. He often spoke about how the country had a sacred duty to care for those who wore the uniform. His administration expanded hotlines, counseling services, and treatment options, making sure that help was available when veterans reached out in their most vulnerable moments. Supporters of the reform praised these steps as historic. Veterans who once felt abandoned began to share stories of receiving timely appointments, quicker responses, and better treatment. Families noticed the difference too, as their loved ones got the care they deserved. The changes brought new confidence in the system, showing that with the right leadership, long-standing problems could be solved. Critics argued that the system still faced challenges and that reforms alone could not erase decades of neglect, but even they acknowledged that progress had been made. For veterans who had waited too long for hope, Trump's actions were a sign that someone was listening, someone was fighting for them. The VA reform became one of the most emotional achievements of his presidency because it was about honoring those who had given everything for their country. The human side of this project cannot be overlooked. Imagine a veteran who had been denied proper care for years, finally sitting in a doctor's office close to home, receiving treatment without endless delays. Imagine a soldier struggling with post-traumatic stress, finally speaking with a counselor who was available because new resources had been added. These were not just policies. They were lifelines for men and women who had already given more than most could imagine. Trump often said that America's greatness comes from its heroes. In his speeches, he reminded the nation that freedom is never free, and that veterans had paid the price of liberty with their courage. His reform of the Veterans Affairs System was his way of keeping a promise to never leave a soldier behind, not on the battlefield and not when they return home. Looking back, this project stands as a powerful reminder of leadership that puts people first. It was about cutting through bureaucracy, restoring dignity, and delivering real results for those who had already given so much. Whether one supported Trump or not, few could deny the impact this reform had on veterans and their families. It turned broken promises into action and frustration into faith, and that is why Trump's reform of the Veterans Affairs System remains one of the most meaningful chapters of his presidency. It was not about politics or headlines. It was about respect, honor, and gratitude. It was about showing America's veterans that their service was valued, their sacrifices were recognized, and their future mattered. For Trump, making America great again also meant making sure that the nation never forgot its heroes, and that promise will always be remembered.